Hello YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to The Outsiders. Tonight on Let's Build an RPG we're going to be talking all about wounds, and I'm going to be giving you a scenario involving an elf character. The reason I'm doing wounds is because originally I intended to do skill choices from the path of combat and magic and building a character, but I realised that you're not going to really see a lot more than what we've already gleaned from the background stuff, and I think it'd be better that once we've got a character sheet ready to share with you, or at least even a preliminary one, it means some of you can follow along out there that are interested, which will make a lot more difference, and it will actually be able to see the character sheet being filled in, which will be a better process, I think. I think for this, it's better for us to focus on the wounds first, then the initiative, and then the combat, and that can look at quite a few interesting facets which a lot of people are asking about, and I think we need this now within the playtest part because we're at that stage. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start with wounds. So we've got a scenario we're using an elf. We're going to assume that that elf character has got 2 wounds in the right arm and 3 wounds in the right leg. Now first off, before I go into how this will work out, there is natural healing every week. So every wound will get 1 wound point back after 7 days. But there is a proviso. That's assuming that you're not on the move, you're not adventuring, you are actually resting. So that's quite an important proviso, and it's an important point within the system because the whole point of this is, of course, I am expecting people to push on, so they're not able to gain that. But every week on the 7th day, irrespective, if you've got a lingering wound, a lingering injury that's been with you for 7 days, you roll a d6. On a 1, it becomes infected. And that's important, and we're going to come back to that in a moment. But for the moment, we're going to look at both these injuries that this elf has. So let's assume he's being treated by someone else who's got a first aid skill of 5. And we look at the 2 wound injury at this point. Now, he would need a 3 to just get a success. Success doesn't get any wounds back. A 4 would give 1. A 5 would give 2, which is sufficient enough to heal the wound. And a 6 would be open-ended, but an exploding dice. But it's not critical at this point because he would have had all his wound points back. So there are a couple of scenarios here. Let's imagine that he only gets 1 wound point back. How does that impact the recovery of the next roll? Well, obviously, he's now only got 1 wound, which is double to 2 days. So he had a recovery check at 4, he got a wound point back, his next recovery check is at 6 days, plus, of course, no matter what happens there, he'll get, if he was resting, he would get if he rested those 2 days, he'd definitely get 1 wound point back on the 7th day, because it's all within the recovery process. So there's a few connotations that can be played in there. If we imagine the leg, of course, the right leg would get a recovery check at 6 days, and then if he's resting, a natural wound point will recover, or on day 7, he would get 1 of those 3 wounds back. However, if after 7 days there are still injuries outstanding, we're going to assume for this little scenario that both wounds haven't actually healed at all, and he has had to keep adventuring, the right arm has become infected. Or actually, we'll call it the right leg has become infected, because that makes more sense. I'm going to read verbatim now from my notes about what happens when you have an infected injury. So initially, once infection is set in, a surgery roll is required to stop and remove infection using the surgery chart. Cross-reference the infection level against the surgery level. The surgeon must roll above the number in order to eradicate the infection. If, however, the roll is equal to it, he does not eradicate the infection, but it does stop the infection advancing for that week. Then the next week, instead of natural healing taking place, he can try once again. If surgery fails to stop advance, for each point he rolls under the number required, the infection increases in severity by 1 point per level. If the surgeon required 4 or over but rolled a 1, the difference between the two is 3, so the infection would advance from a level 4 infection to a level 7. If the infection ever goes above a type 12 infection, the victim will die, as the infection must spread to a major organ or artery. The whole infection procedure is carried out every week till one way or the other the infection has been beaten or taken over. So you can see infection is very serious within this game. Now we're going to take a little scenario here about infection just so you can see it a little in play. Now infection levels are fairly straightforward, so if you have a surgery skill, for example, even of 1 and the infection level is 2, then you need a 2 or more on a d6 to eradicate the you need to get above a 2 to take away some of the infection level. Obviously a 4 will eradicate the infection level completely, a 3 will mean it's down to 1, a 5 will completely eradicate 6 and then it's gone. If you rolled a 1, of course, the infection level would have spread from a 2, for argument's sake, to a 3 infection now, so it becomes more tricky for that person to treat. So if we take a slightly different scenario and just sort of explain this in a little bit more detail, because I appreciate there's a lot to take in. Let's imagine that 3 infection level. The infection level is the level of the wound to start with, and then how it increases. So let's take the leg. So that's the 3 wounds, so a 3 infection. He rolled a 1, okay? That added 2 to it, so now it's a 5 infection with somebody with 1 surgery. So we now know that the only way he's going to beat that infection off is he's got to roll a 6. If he does roll a 6, of course, open-ended, he may even eradicate it completely, which would be great. But until he eradicates it, this infection is getting worse, it's spreading, and it makes it very hard. Of course, other wounds can heal and be treated, but there will come a point where the infection will overtake someone and they will die. So this is quite important, this particular point. Sorry for dwelling on it, but it's important to cover that off within this bit. So what we've done today, just very quickly, is we've talked about first aid, we've talked about recovery times. We've taken the elf example here. We've shown that a 2 wound for an elf becomes 4 days, a 3 wound becomes 6 days. There's natural healing at 7 days. Normally on natural healing, you roll a dice for everything that you have, and as long as you don't roll a 1, it naturally heals 1 point. So you have that. There are options, of course. If you explore between the lines, quite a few options. So the person who had the 2 wounds in the arm, at 4 days, he got a check. He may have been aggravating, adventuring, got lucky, and got 1 wound point back. He then had a choice. In 2 days, he would get a recovery check to see at stage 6 whether it recovers any more, or he could wait it out 3 days, at day 7, and guarantee the point back and not actually worry about the recovery check, which is kind of cool. And that actually could be quite useful. So it's up to there's a few connotations within this that the players can sort of think about. It's quite a deliberate mechanic because it's intended to position the players or force the players to think about where they are camping out, using their skills, thinking about their situation, gaining ties. All about networking, as they say in life. This is no different in this game, and about utilising the things they have. And we have a little bit of time at the end of this video, and I just wanted to cover something else off, if I may, in this video, which is about, we talked a little bit in playtesting regarding a very simple hit location system, and it sort of struck me that there are a number of options open to us here. Because, in essence, the body has 6 really good hit location points: the head, the main trunk, the 2 arms and the 2 legs. That's quite neat. It's not easy to do just on the 1 dice. I'd love to be able to utilise the 1 dice, but it sort of made sense that you could have an extra a dice only when you've succeeded and hit and it's definitely penetrated. You could then see where you've hit on an extra roll, which is, I don't think it takes up anything more because that dice is already on the table, you've already rolled it for the damage. So it's there, and we tried that out and that seems to work quite well. I'd love to have a little dice that you roll within the game frame that had the limbs and bits and all, kind of nice, but I think we may be overcomplicating it. So I'm just sharing that with you, that we have thought about that side of it just for simplicity. Now also as well, major wounds. Let's take major wounds. So if you receive a major wound is anything that takes up half or more of your maximum wound total. So for example, if you had 12 wounds and you receive 6 wounds in 1 location or more, that is savage, that's serious. It's going to do something pretty serious to the character. So an example might be if you got hit in the head, it'd be very easy for the player to say someone's gone into a coma, they've been knocked unconscious, something like that, and they're out cold, and they may be out for several days. It might be quite interesting as well that, if you get hit, say, in the left arm, that might be nerve damage, so it might actually be that it might have another weapon in that hand. That's out of the combat equation. So that's nice and simple, but actually makes a lot of relevant sense within there's quite simple mechanics that we're actually utilising here, and so on. So that's a little bit about it. Another thing that I wanted to quickly cover off was death due to massive shock. Sorry, it's all very grim for wounds. But if your wounds drop below 0, then you're automatically you've dropped to the ground. You're automatically unconscious, and you're risking death every 6 seconds. So the way it works is, say for example you're -1, you collapse. On 6 seconds after that, because we're doing round by round, second by second in this combat, it's a straight line initiative system. If no one's got across to you to try and help you, then you make a roll. If you roll a 1, you die. And this continues on until you receive some first aid successfully to stabilise you, or unfortunately your character perspires. So that's really it in a nutshell for this week's Let's Build an RPG. I've been Sean Connors, talking all about the wound system within this game. I hope it hasn't scared you off. There's a lot to cover off in there. There's a lot of interesting bits to it and some tactics. Until the next time, hopefully over the weekend, we'll talk about initiative. Till then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.